will not make you live longer, or we can't make those claims. It's not going to save you from a disease. It might make you healthier, and there's a lot of people it has. It will definitely cure you of veganism. It's the only thing I can say definitively.
In the 1930s, if you had obesity or diabetes or hypertension, you had no treatment, you died, unless you went to Duke and got treated by Dr. Kempner. And what did he do? Rice and fruit. That was all you could eat. Weight dropped like crazy. People had unbelievably great results. Now, the problem was Dr. Kempner tended to whip patients if they ate anything but. And he lost his license. And so I've put my whip away.
Hi, I'm Stephanie, and in this video we'll be comparing what a carnivore favoring doctor has to say about his diet versus what a vegan doctor has to say about his diet. And I personally will make a few comments here and there as well. First, before we get into it, I do want to say I do believe that everyone has the best interests of other people at heart, especially if they're recommending diets. So in no means do I think that one or the other doctor has some sort of evil agenda by promoting a specific diet. Everyone has the freedom of choice to choose whatever diet they think is most suitable to them. That aside, let me introduce you to the two doctors I chose for this comparison. So on the one hand, we have the carnivore doctor, Dr. Shawn Baker, who wrote the book The Carnivore Diet. He is offering his diet and lifestyle program online, and he used to be an orthopedic surgeon until he got his license revoked in 2017, if my information is correct.
This is my anecdote. I'm 53. This was right before my 53rd birthday. I don't take drugs. I don't take hormone replacement. I've got like some records in sports. And
on the other hand, we have Dr. Garth Davis. They're both around the same age, so he's 53 at the moment, and he is a bariatric surgeon who wrote the book Proteinaholic: How Our Obsession with Meat is Killing Us and What We Can Do About It. And as a bariatric surgeon, he helps his patients to regain their health with surgery as well as with his lifestyle advice.
Because most of my days, I'm going to talk to you about nutrition, but most of my days are spent looking like this, you know, with surgery stuff on, and I do massive surgeries where I rearrange intestines.
What diet is it exactly that both of these doctors recommend?
so what is a carnivore diet? Since I wrote the book, I've taken the liberty to be able to define it the way I like to define it. So I consider it a nutrient-dense animal source foods with the complete elimination or limitation of plants to the degree necessary to provide health. So you see I've got this or limitation. So that doesn't mean everyone has to be strictly 100% meat, salt, and water like some people do. And many people find that to be helpful. But I do think that we have to kind of figure out, you know, what the goal is, and the goal is health. And so we take the dogma out of this.
What to eat? Easy. Eat real food. Not too much, mostly plants, as Michael Pollock said. It's very simple, it's very easy. Don't tell them they have to be vegan, but they have to flip the protein. More fruits, more vegetables, more beans. This is medicine.
You know, many people will just do fatty red meats. You know, when you don't have carbohydrates, you need energy. Fat seems to be a good source of that. Protein's not a particularly good energy source.
Let's think about this some more. So there's certainly a way and an argument to make that fat can be an energy source. However, research has shown that a high-fat diet is impairing artery function a few hours after a meal. And if I were to think that I would eat breakfast, lunch and dinner a high-fat meal, that would leave my arteries in an impaired state throughout the day. That's why I would go for carbs.
In fact, they did a study where they put people in a hospital ward and they kept feeding them more and more and more carbs. And they didn't gain any fat because your body can't turn carbs to fat. It's very hard, called de novo lipogenesis. And it just doesn't happen.
There's some people that feel that organs are essential. I don't necessarily feel that way, but that's a bit of a controversy. And I think whatever works for you is what works, and I think we just need to sort of realize that.
Interesting standpoint. Now, what are the overall benefits of these prospective diets?
So why does it seem to help? I mean, I'm not going to say I know for sure, but I've got some speculation. You know, one thing is, and we heard about satiety. I mean, appetite regulation, we see it with the ketogenic diet. Satiety is very important.
Fiber is what's going to really make you full. What is the most filling food you could possibly eat? They did this study. They had people eat different foods and see what would make them full. And the most filling food that was kind of just way out there was potatoes.
Whether it results in a calorie deficit or not, whether there's a metabolic advantage, you know, David Ludwig might argue about that.
This was a study that was passed around a lot. Dietary carb restriction improves metabolic syndrome. Sounds good. If you restrict your carbs, your metabolism is going to do fantastic. Now, the results, they say, that this works really well for treating metabolic syndrome. And if you just read the abstract, you'd be like, wow, low carb works. Now, you might want to spend a few minutes on their conflicts of interest, where they get money from Atkins and from dairy. And then when you start really getting into the detail, almost nothing changed between the low carb and the low fat, the high carb group. Almost nothing. The only thing that changed is there was a slight drop in triglycerides. HDL went up. Now, let me tell you something. Everybody talks about, oh, good cholesterol. Matters not. There's been a million studies on this. Increasing good cholesterol does not improve heart health at all, but we better, they're like, we better show this because nothing else happened in the study. And then the other thing that happened in the study was that the size of the LDL particle changed, and they're like, this is all we got to go with, let's make a big article about it. And people fell for it, but it really didn't show much. Now, I want you to see what the high carb group ate. So Cinnamon Life cereal for breakfast with some egg beaters and Gouda cheese. Lunch was diced ham with a russet potato and marshmallow fluff. That's the high carb diet that they were comparing to. That's how you set up. No one reads this part of it. They're not the nerds like me, right? Who's like, let me see exactly what they were feeding these people. And it's easy to dupe someone when they don't know these facts.
Certainly we know protein seems to be an advantageous macronutrient for not putting on fat.
They published a study and they said, look, people that aren't on ketosis don't burn as much fat as people that are on ketosis when they exercise. Now, it was two different studies, and they were comparing two different studies. This study had 300 people in it, exercising 15 to 35 minutes. This had 5 people in it, and they exercised for 2.5 hours. It's not apples and oranges, but if I took these things away and just put this on my Instagram, people would be like, wow, ketosis works. And that's kind of the part of the problem that we have.
And then obviously when you have glucose, it's very stable, and resolution of hyperinsulinemia on a carnivore diet seems to help with that, just like many people see on a ketogenic diet. So those things all seem to be favorable for why it seems to work.
And there's this protein drives you to just eat more meat. Well, there was a humongous study done in Europe. Follow 500,000 people, and they followed them for 12 years. And what was the #1 food causing weight gain? Meat. Specifically, when you really get into the data of the study, specifically poultry. Which is weird, right? Because people think, my patients are like, oh, I'm eating healthy, I'm eating clean. I love it when they call chicken clean, because you prepare the chicken using tongs and a hazmat suit, but it's clean. So we should know that this works. The Adventist Health Study, where they followed 60,000 Adventist health people over 30 years, and you could see that the more plant-based you were, the lower your body mass index was. And the reason this works is, well, there's many reasons, but one of them is calorie density, right? It's how much it fills up your stomach.
So nutrition science, I put quotes around that, and I know Dr. Westman's done a lot of the research, but there is a lot of problems with nutrition science. I think we need to be realistic about that, about what we can say and what we can't say. I think short-term stuff we can say a lot. I think long-term stuff about the effects of nutrition on mortality, disease based on epidemiologic studies, which is the vast majority of what we do, in nutrition science, has some big holes in it.
Oh no, he did it. He attacked my beloved nutritional science. Well, let's do a quick fact check. The possible downside of epidemiological studies is that they're only capable of documenting possible patterns between the relationship of food and outcome. So they can't for sure establish a cause and effect relationship. Luckily, we don't only have to rely on epidemiological studies. We have thousands upon thousands of randomized control trials, as well as meta-analysis in that field, which are pretty much on the top of the hierarchy when it comes to scientific evidence. And what most of these studies point to, that there are certainly health benefits if you increase the consumption of vegetables, of fruits, of whole grains and legumes. By the way, if you enjoy watching it so far, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. That would help me out a lot. Thank you very much, and let's go back to the video. It also shows that there is definitely a factor of saturated fat and cholesterol intake and the plaque that builds up in the coronary arteries, and that can lead to heart disease. So although we don't have studies where they put people for 20 years in an isolated study and control for all sorts of lifestyle factors, we can say that certain foods are associated with certain health outcomes. It's not just one single epidemiological study pointing toward, it's a whole bounty of evidence that points towards that direction.
And I know we're all proponents of low-carb diets here, but I mean, when we're talking about, am I going to live longer? Am I going to avoid heart disease? These things are a little bit, things we don't need to focus on.
Since I want to live a healthy, long life and hopefully prevent heart disease, which is currently the #1 killer, I do want to focus on that. Thank you very much, though.
Essential requirements for nutrition. This is biochemistry. This is not controversial. We need essential fats, essential amino acids, vitamins, and then minerals. And some people put micronutrients there, but I think minerals covers that pretty well. This is what we clearly have to survive as human beings. What we don't need, and this is a controversial start, do we need plants? I haven't had them in 3 years. I'm not dead.
Well, I haven't had meat in 4 years, and I'm still alive too.
So if we say there's an essential plant, I challenge you to point out, tell me which one is it. Remember, humans started, arguably, or Homo sapiens started arguably in Africa, and we made it through Southern Europe, Asia, North America, down to South America, and then finally the Pacific Islands. And so what plant was growing everywhere all year long, in all climates and all seasons? And if you can find something, and maybe grass, I don't know. We don't, and are they always available? So when we say, there's superfoods, there's these plants we have to survive, I can't think of one. Let's say, where do you get blueberries in January in Alaska or, northern Canada? They're just not there.
Well, you do know that you can buy blueberries and bananas in stores or in the frozen section whenever. We don't have to actually go and harvest our own fruit these days. Very privileged. But that's actually not my point. I never thought about the fact that I would need a specific plant to survive, because while we evolved, we live in very different climates in the world, and not everything grows everywhere, even before we had imports. And like you said earlier, we do need specific amino acids, vitamins and nutrients, and some form of energy. May be fat or might be carbohydrates to survive. But we don't need to get it from potatoes. We don't need to get it from rice. We don't need to get it from corn. We can eat a variety of plants and get all the nutrients we need. So there's no single plant we need to eat. And at the same time, I would argue that there is no specific animal that you would need to eat, because there are many animals that humans consume, and not every animal is accessible to everyone. I mean, in India, people don't really eat cows, and in China, they eat dogs, which we don't eat. So there's not like a specific animal that you need to eat to survive either.
In fact, if you look around the world at the healthiest cultures in the world, look at the blue zones. Are they avoiding carbs? No, in Okinawa, they eat mainly sweet potatoes and rice. That's the vast majority of their calorie intake is beans and rice. And they lose weight over time, instead of us who gain weight as we get older.
So fiber is another one. We've got to have fiber. Fiber is essential. If we don't have fiber, our colon's going to fall out. The fiber-loving bacteria are going to revolt. But it just doesn't happen. And so, one of the thoughts, the latest belief that fiber is necessary so we can produce these things called short-chain fatty acids. And again, there is no award at the end of life for the largest or most frequent bowel movements. A study that I think was Ann Peary did in like 2012, and she looked at 2,000 colonoscopies, and she saw that the people that had the most fiber, the most bowel movements, had the highest incidence of diverticulosis, which are these little pouches that come off your colon, which later get irritated or infected and end up with diverticulitis. And so there's pretty much evidence out there that shows that maybe we don't need to be just killing ourselves with so much fiber.
Killing ourselves with fiber? Let's just look at some of the most fiber-richest foods that we eat, which are beans.
This study was one of the biggest studies ever on beans, and it showed that beans are the most important dietary predictor of survival in older people. How possibly can you say that beans are bad for you if it is the #1 predictor of longevity? And yet people are just free to just lie now, just outright lie. I see this stuff and I'm like, I'm speechless. That's why I'm so angry on Instagram. Interesting is, we have found, now remember that drug I told you is going to change the face of weight loss, the GLP-1? Guess what? Plants increase GLP-1. And so you can get that GLP-1 effect by eating a high plant-based diet. And I think a lot of you know that because you're plant-based eaters, and we feel full. I'm not hungry right now after my oatmeal breakfast that I had.
Again, predicting the future. Again, using these nutritional studies. So can anybody tell me the randomized control trial of any diet where they put people long enough to get hard endpoint clinical outcomes. That would be 20 years in a metabolic ward using twins, controlling every variable, so you can say definitively what causes heart disease, cancer, and so on and so forth. So we don't have that. So we end up using this lower quality evidence, this nutritional epidemiology, some animal studies, or biomarker outcomes. We can short term, we can see whose cholesterol goes up, whose cholesterol goes down. Those things are really just not good for making these determinations. And so I don't even attempt to go there. I don't know. That's why I said I have no idea if this diet's going to make anyone live longer or shorter, because I just don't think it's possible to find that out.
One thing that makes me wonder about that statement though is, if I would say nutritional science is just complete bullshit, we don't know any health outcomes from any diet, and I would just be like, oh, I'll just do what feels best for me, I'll just do whatever I want. But doesn't that mean you make your decisions based on case reports, based on anecdotals, and based on online advice? Which is basically the weakest point of evidence you can have. Which makes me wonder, do I want to go with what the majority of good quality science study says, or do I want to go with anecdotes and what I believe to be the best thing for me? Just a thought. Now, is there anything that both doctors can agree with?
And I think we have a healthcare system which in my view is actually sick. I think the healthcare system itself is sick. I've come recently to call the healthcare system the disease management industry, because that's really what we're doing.
I look at the hospital and I think 85% of the people in this hospital are there because of what they eat. 85%. And he drew this cartoon that we as doctors are mopping up a floor and not turning off the faucet. And that faucet is what we eat. We're eating the wrong food.
It's lifestyle, it's nutrition, it's exercise, sleep, stress, light. We've heard all this before, and it doesn't change. The basics are the basics.
And hopefully this will be the doctor of the future. I want you to meditate for 20 minutes twice a day, exercise for 30 minutes, avoid processed food, eat plenty of organic fruits and vegetables, spend more time in nature, less indoors, stop worrying about things you can't control, ditch your TV and phone, and come back and see me in 3 weeks.
7 hours driving on the